My father leaving, that was one. That was a big deal. He had been like having other relationships since I was born throughout my entire childhood, and then my parents finally split when I was around 12, and that was about it. I just didn't really understand anything. I don't think I like cognitively had the ability to understand what was going on or understand how it affected me or how I really felt about things going on. So it just was like more like emotional distress without like actually understanding like the concepts of like what was going on in my parents' relationship and then my interpersonal relationships with everybody in my family. Honestly, like my friends are like family to me, so everything's great, like even with him not there.
My parents were not necessarily involved in my life. I was mainly raised by my grandparents. I saw my parents regularly, my mother and father, but they weren't the ones who raised me. I had a relatively solitary upbringing, even though I'm one of 5. Age gaps and different homes kind of led to that experience for me. So growing up, I felt a lot like an outsider. So I've had to forge my own path and create my own community, find my own space. So I'd say that's what's influenced me the most.
You know, kind of back to breaking the chain thing. Went through life, essentially one parent. Went through most of my life thinking that I only had one deadbeat parent, but got a little older, realized that there's 2. So, again, raising my kids to not experience that.
So many, you know. At the same time, though, they shaped me, though. Abuse from my mother, being disregarded by your siblings, by my siblings. Those 2 things shaped me. I'm gonna put it to you like this: tough love is the thing that I got from my childhood that made me who I am right now. The tough love. You know what I'm saying? Not, you know, like I said before, abuse from my mother, being disregarded by my siblings, you know, a lot of the mistreatment. It could have went a different direction, but instead it fueled me. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, now let's go back to the first question. That fueled me to want to matter. You know what I'm saying? Because how I came up made me want to matter. One day I'm going to be somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, you develop that. One day I ain't going to do this to my kids when I get older, or I'ma love when so the tough love. So question 1 is answered by question 2.
My mom and dad getting divorced, being the youngest of my family, and having to pick sides in front of a judge to determine who I was going to stay with. My mom, she would ask me to write a letter to the judge or something, and I just didn't know what to do. So I had my father, and basically she got everything, and my dad just told me to go where the money is. And basically she had all of it because, when we lived in Indiana at the time, it was rough. So it was a lot of people coming in with, welfare, stacking food up to the ceiling, Section 8 apartments. That was probably the biggest impact, was having to decide which parent I wanted to live with.
Probably losing my little brother. I mean, I was young when it happened. I was like 4 or 5, and it was a car accident, but I don't know. Like, to this day, I still have moments where I rethink about it and just wish I could have more time, or wish I could, experience the things since he was the closest one towards my age. Maybe not having my dad move on, or like not pass on, but just kind of head out and dip out. Those are probably the only 2 things, though. My brother was big loss. And since we were the only 2 close in age in my family, it was kind of like losing another half, but he was so young, I don't really know.
Probably going out with a single mom. It shaped a lot of the ways I view things, a lot of the ways that I carry myself. I never wanted to give her anything extra to worry about growing up. You already have to worry about being a parent by yourself, so let me make sure I'm making the good grades. Let me make sure I'm behaving accordingly. Let me make sure that you have no reason to worry about me not making it home safely that night. And I still reflect a lot of that same energy today.
Losing loved ones, my grandparents, just that disconnection, because those are like the foundation of the family. So I think that's the main thing that affects me. It's just once the grandparents are gone, it's like everybody else scatters. So yeah. My first one passed when I was 9 or 10. Yeah, that first connection. That was because I want to hold on to everything. And that was something I wanted to hold on to dearly. And, you know, when she passed away, my grandmother passed away, it was like, oh, you know, it was sad, but it was also a disconnection. So, yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing was the family, you know, once that backbone is gone, they start scattering and no one comes together again to have family reunions and stuff like that. So that was kind of a disconnection for that side of the family.
The time I was stuck in an elevator. I absolutely love elevators. That's my passion. I run a big YouTube channel about them and a small elevator museum. My elevator museum is basically, it started out with a childhood obsession I had with elevators. I took that love of elevators to the internet, and I never realized it would blow up so much. I started collecting elevator parts, and I did a few videos about them, and people wanted to see them, so I kept acquiring more to the point where I've gotten really well known in the elevator industry, and a lot of stuff gets dumped on me now.
The fact that I really didn't grow up having a lot of friends. I mean, I was always very introverted. Now here I am, and I don't have those like childhood connections I could always go back to. Like, hey, like, how are you doing? Like, how have you been? Even something like that. But especially like those strong, lifelong bonds with someone that that goes like a long way. Like having a ride or die kind of person when things go sideways. So that's a hard one. That's a hard one for me growing up as in the childhood experiences. I mean, I've had several, but that's one that definitely still affects me today.
My parents' divorce, and also with my parents' divorce, the introduction of my stepfather in my life, because he's been a huge influence on me. So with some sad things comes good things, and having like almost like 2 father figures in my life was a really big like benefit for me. As well as like growing up, I had 2 older sisters. Between my mom getting remarried, it was, you know, I was raised by all girls, my mom and my sisters, so that also plays a huge part.
Being introverted, shy, bullied kid, and growing up in a house with 6 siblings, kind of being invisible in the family is probably the most profound. I don't know that I really want to answer that question. My mom's right over here, and it wasn't the happiest childhood, so.
I don't know. I'd probably have to go somewhere sports related, something along the lines of my first competition. It affects the drive to perform and some of the feelings of worthiness that I get from performance rather than just being content. So I'd probably say like my first football game. That's affected a lot of the way I motivate myself in a bad way and a good way. This season of my life, I'm really learning to be content without performance. I feel like I'm good enough without somebody telling me that, which is kind of what sports is based on. It's hindered me in a lot of ways of like really being hard on myself when I couldn't perform or when I didn't perform up to expectations. So I feel like it's held me back a little bit more than it's helped me, just from being, you know, so afraid to fail. It's almost inhuman to feel that way.
So when I was at school, from about the age of like 10 to 16, I lacked a lot in confidence. I was a very quiet person. Even though I played a lot of sport, football, soccer, for Americans, I was still very quiet, very reserved. I went on a family holiday when I was 15 to Canada to visit family in British Columbia. That experience in particular gave me an interest in North America, and particularly the culture and the history of North America. And that led me to pursue a degree in American history in England at the University of East Anglia, which is in a place called Norwich. That degree itself led me eventually to do an exchange program to come to Roanoke College in Virginia. I feel like doing that degree in particular and coming over to America really reinforced my interest in American culture and American history. Really, I can trace it all back to going over to Canada the first time. Obviously, America, their cultural output is quite outsized relative to everywhere else in the world. Growing up with American movies, American television. That probably contributed somewhat, but certainly the visit to Canada sort of planted the seed of my interest in North American history, North American culture. Pretty much led me to the degree that I wanted to do and the experience I had because of that degree.